Well, hello there. I can't hear you, Justin. Not yet.
How you doing, Jay?
I am better than ever. Thanks for asking.
Excellent.
How are you doing?
I am stoked to be here. So excited to have you as a guest here on Gentleman's Purpose. And man, it's just it's an exciting thing. And so we were talking a little bit before we came on air, and just want to say hello to everybody who's joining us for the live stream. Welcome to Gentleman's Purpose. This is based on a podcast based on an e-magazine. We just actually went live today with our April edition, so you can pick that up at gentlemanspurpose.com, or you can pick up all the issues, including the current one, at issue.com/gentleman's purpose. That's ISSUU.com/gentleman's purpose. And so yeah, we have Janine Stella here, and with just an amazing person. She started a podcast. Tell us about your podcast.
So I've been around the gambit the last year. I've dabbled in this and that. I actually have two right now. One is the Alphabet Soup Experience that I have with my co-host Matt Posner, who's awesome. And then I have another one called Skulls and Stilettos, which is kind of a mixture of interviewing people from whether you're a custodian to a CEO, kind of an all walks of life type of podcast. So I love interviewing people. It doesn't matter where they're from in life. I just want to hear their story. So everyone has a story to tell, no matter what walk of life you have. So yeah. I really became interested in interviewing people a while back, and I kind of felt like I had a calling for it, and I really enjoy doing it. So, hey, you got to go with your passion and what you feel, right?
Yeah, very cool. Tell me about the name. I mean, that's a very interesting, catchy name. Like, how'd you come up with that?
So I am obsessed with the Day of the Dead skulls. I love them.
Okay.
Day of the Dead. I love Mexican culture. I love the story of the sugar skulls and their meaning in symbolism in Mexican culture. And so because of that, I wanted to do something where it kind of signified people that were rough and people that were glamorous. So to me, a skull signifies someone that is a little rough, whether they're a biker or whether they're hard.
Right.
Maybe hard on the outside, but maybe a softie on the inside. Doesn't have to be aesthetically speaking, right? Mm-hmm. And then someone who maybe is prim and proper on the outside, but maybe they're covered in tattoos from head to toe.
Right.
That wears heels and goes to work every day and wears a suit. So I kind of feel like everyone has a story, no matter what you look like. And I just got inspired by the name.
Okay.
And thought, hey, I love stilettos and I love skulls. So why don't I just combine the two?
Okay. Now I know that you do a lot of you seem to do a lot of work with MMA and that sort of thing. So maybe tell us how that kind of fits in with the whole gambit of what you do.
Good question. So a dear friend of mine that I've been friends with since middle school, literally, Justin Sims, is the videographer for Titan FC. And he first saw my radio show last year and thought, this would be a really cool thing to do from a female perspective in the MMA world, because there's not very many female announcers or commentators in the MMA genre, right? So I thought, let's try it. So my co-host at the time, we went down in last July, and ever since then, we've been just really immersed into the fight scene. It's so bizarre, right? How if you would have told me 2 years ago that I would be standing, backstage after a fight with people covered in sweat and blood, I would have told you were crazy. Like that was the last thing I ever would have thought I'd be doing, but it is so much fun, and the adrenaline and the momentum and the stories behind who these guys are, and females for that matter, and what their life was before they were introduced to martial arts and what it means to them now and how their life is going because of martial arts. It's such an interesting dichotomy that I just fell in love with it.
Very cool. So now you're interested in the Day of the Dead. Have you ever actually been in Mexico during the festival?
Never. It's on my bucket list.
Not yet.
I've been to Mexico, but not during Day of the Dead.
Okay, well that's
not during the
definitely
festival.
something to put
I've
on the
been to
calendar, right?
Carnival in Venice. Everyone wears masks there. It kind of counts a little bit. Fantasy Fest in
How does
Key
that?
West.
I was getting ready to say, how does it compare to Fantasy Fest? Because that I have been to that.
Well, Carnival is very interesting. There's only a few places, in the world that actually do a carnival, and Venice is one of them, in San Marco Square. If you ever get the chance to go to Carnival in Venice, it's very interesting. It's actually where the movie Eyes Wide Shut was filmed with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. There's a section of the film that was actually filmed in Venice, and one of the shops, they sell all the masquerade
Mm-hmm.
costumes and masks and whatnot. So you can go through, and it's kind of sexy and fun, because you're walking around. People are on horses. People are in very ornate, dramatic Elizabethan type of outfits, and
Okay.
you're immersed in this kind of kooky world where you can't see who's on the other side,
Right. Right. Okay.
and a lot
So
of alcohol.
a lot of alcohol. That's true.
Yes.
That's actually when I went down to Fantasy Fest. I was in college, and I had my mom's Volkswagen Beetle, like a new version of it. And it was like a Friday afternoon, and we had no idea. And one of my buddies like, I think they're having a Fantasy Fest. We're like, okay, well, West Palm, take us a couple hours. We'll get there. We'll sleep in the car if we have to. It was a crazy weekend, that's for sure.
What was the coolest thing you saw during Fantasy Fest?
When they were having this big they were having like this big parade, and they had this spider that was like, I don't know how they were doing it. It was like a puppet, but it like basically spanned the entire seat, like the entire street. It was kind of like a almost like the
Wow,
movie It or something. It was wild.
that's
But
neat.
yeah.
And of course, the body paint, right? I'm obsessed with all the body paint shows. So
Yeah.
I'm really into that. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, I met a gal at the pub up in West Palm on Village, and she actually moved to Orlando, but we kept in touch because she was like one of my favorite servers there, and she's really into that in Orlando. That's a huge thing. Like, she goes to all these professional shows and everything like that. The full body paint. A little too wild for me at this point in my life, but she's into it. It's her thing, and it's really cool. Like the artwork that they do, though, it's amazing.
It's unbelievable, the level of artistic ability that people can have to be able to do something like that, right? It blows your
Absolutely.
mind.
Absolutely.
One day,
So,
one day
yeah,
I'll do
one
it.
day, maybe. So here at Gentleman's Purpose, one of the main things that we focus on is kind of guiding men through various aspects of life to help them kind of identify their purpose if they don't know what it is.
Are
And
you sure
then
you
once,
want my opinion? No, I'm just
I,
kidding.
well, here's the thing. I definitely want your point of view, because I think what can happen a lot of times is when you get groupthink going on, it's good to have a fresh voice come in and kind of give you an idea, maybe. So if you have any blind spots, you kind of have those revealed to you. So basically, talk to me a little bit about like when I'm one of the things that we talk about the guys right from the get-go is a matter of faith. And so, or what you actually believe about how the world actually works. And so, I mean, I personally come from a Christian perspective. Now, I didn't grow up in the church at all. As a teenager, even in college, I would consider myself like a capitalistic atheist, or maybe agnostic if you're lucky. And so, but that changed for me at 25. But from a female perspective, when you're kind of working with men or you're in relationships with men, how does their worldview, the things they actually hold to be true, like in their core being, how does that matter to you?
Worldview or religious view?
Well, here's the thing. I always hear the word religion, and I typically hear it in a negative context. And when I look at actual scripture, New Testament scripture, again, coming from a Christian perspective, it defines religion that's pure in God's sight as you look after orphans, you look after widows, and you keep yourself unstained from the world. So you don't go shooting up heroin or smoking crack or anything. So, I mean, so religion in a biblical sense, that's what that is. So if you ask me about religion, yes, I believe those are good things personally.
I believe, and I can answer to this. I've dated people from all different religions. I have dated a Muslim for over 4 years. I've dated people that were Jewish. I've dated Catholics. I myself grew up with a Catholic background. The fundamentals of all of those religions are extremely similar if you've studied theology. So the core principles of those religions are a lot more similar than they are different if people actually stopped and looked at it.
Right.
First of all. So the core principles of what their beliefs were to their core were very similar to mine. I don't think the religious aspect plays a part as much as the culture. If you're Western culture versus Eastern, there's different views on Westerners versus people in different parts of the world. And so I think you have to, if you're going to make a relationship work, you have to really want to understand that person's culture and not be blinded or judgmental towards it. You have to be 100% all in and open.
Okay. So, I mean, coming from a Catholic background, and I know a lot of folks I have a lot of friends that are Catholic, and I always say I went to ghetto Catholic school because I did like prison ministry for 4 years. It was based on a Catholic ministry, and like going into Martin County Correctional Institution, that's a psych camp. It was an interesting time. Let's just say that. But anyway, coming from a Catholic background, my understanding of Catholicism is basically that there's a body of Christ, and everybody who's a part of that body of Christ, as their home, so to speak, right? And so when you enter into a relationship, does that worldview inform your decision making with regard to what you're looking for? Because you mentioned the commonalities in all these different faiths. So I know that in Christendom, the three core values are faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. So if you have someone who's faithful, you have someone who has hope for a brighter future, and you have someone who's willing to lay their life down for you as your husband, or someone, anytime you have some authority figure in your life down for you. So those are the core values or the primary virtues of Christianity and Catholicism. And so are those things important to you? And what kind of role does that play, or do you see that playing within your household?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think that it's a make or break if some, for example, I'll give you an example. I'm divorced, but I did marry someone who was also Catholic, grew up in Catholic faith. My father and my mother both grew up in Catholic faith, but my father, God rest his soul, became Buddhist towards the end of his life and did chanting, and very, very different, right? But we both lived in the same household.
Yeah, but if you're Catholic, I've seen, actually, if anybody's ever read like The 7-Story Mountain by Merton, I mean, this is a very meditative faith where you're focusing on meditating on certain concepts that in some way, shape, or form are informing you spirit, soul, and body. I consider myself a very spiritual person. I know there's a lot of Christians that I've dealt with who kind of don't connect with me very well because they see it as mysticism. Whereas when the Ruach HaKodesh, as the Jewish people, would call it the Holy Spirit, is something that's very real and yet very spirit realm type of thing. So it's not something that's, kind of really connected to, well, it is connected to all your five senses, but it's not something that someone who doesn't know that experiences. Does that make sense?
It does. I think at the end of the day, to answer your question fairly, I think if someone has good core values, they're high in their standards when it comes to integrity and values.
Okay.
It doesn't matter to me personally what religion they are if they have those principles, because I've lived with people of all different religions. However, if they could be Catholic and they could have no principles and no integrity and cannot embody anything that Catholicism has and say they're Catholic, I think that's hypocrisy at its finest right there. So,
okay. See, like me personally, I've had some experience with the Catholic Church, as I said, But and we'll move on from this topic here pretty quickly. But for the guys who are listening and they're thinking, okay, I want to be a good man, a good husband, and I want my personal faith is important to me. And so if you have guys who their personal faith is important to them, and you as a woman are looking for a relationship with a man, would a person who had a strong faith would that detract from your kind of attraction towards them?
I don't think so. I think passion is something that is a love language for me. So if someone's passionate, it depends on what they're passionate about.
Right.
But the lack of passion, period, in someone is very unattractive to me. I think everyone needs to find their passion. It doesn't matter if it's sweeping floors or if it's speaking on a stage. As long as you hone in on what your passion is and go after it, that's attractive to me.
Okay. It's funny that you say that. Jesus actually says something very similar. He says, either be hot or cold. Otherwise, if you're lukewarm, I'm just going to vomit you out of my mouth, which is pretty graphic, you know? So, I find that pretty wild. But so thank you for that. So the next thing that, you know, a lot of us look at Gentleman's Purpose is relationships. And a big focus of conversation for us recently has been this idea of having clear, concise, and compelling communication within a relationship. Now, you hear the 3 C's in college and you apply it to the boardroom oftentimes, but we hear all the time about how important communication is in personal relationships. And yet we as men seem to be terrible at it a lot of the times. So what kind of maybe insight or advice can you give the guys?
I'm going to sip on my coffee while you keep talking before I answer that question. Keep going.
Okay. So I mean, if you have a group, but if you have a guy who's genuinely trying to communicate well, like to understand his own feelings and to be able to express them in a way that you can really take hold of them and you see that it's genuine, you know, what can a guy really do in a gentlemanly fashion to be a good communicator of how he's feeling with a woman?
I actually went through this today. Okay, so I truly believe that communication is something that you have to have trust with that other person to be able to trust them, because obviously if you're willing to communicate, that shows that you care, correct? If you're not communicating effectively, if you're in a relationship with someone, you just don't care. What I mean by that is, if someone did something and I was on the outskirts of a relationship, they could bark in my ear until I was blue in the face and I wouldn't think anything of it. I wouldn't give it any attention, right? Because I stopped caring.
Right.
But communication is key in a relationship, in any relationship, whether it's romantic, whether it's a family member or a dear friend that you've had for 1 minute or 20 years. Because if you learn how to effectively communicate, everyone works in a different way. People communicate and understand people on different levels, which is why people are different, right? So the level in which I communicate with one person is not going to be the same as how I communicate with someone else. I think you have to find a common ground and really work to understand that person to see if you can effectively communicate on some level, because some people just can't get it.
Okay.
You've ever met people and you're just like, we don't mesh?
Yeah.
The pheromones, the universe is not colliding. Something's not working. Their way of communicating and your way just don't interlock. There are several people like that.
Okay.
But I think if you really are willing to work on a friendship or any type of relationship, you have to understand how that person communicates and then let them know and be aware that when they're doing something that you don't quite understand, you need to say, I can't read your mind. Can you rephrase that for me? Because none of us are mind readers, correct? Like we're all trying to navigate through the world, but sometimes we assume what another person's thinking. And assumption is the antithesis of communication, because you can't assume anything. You just
makes an ass out of you and me, right?
Absolutely.
So Yeah, they actually say the biggest difficulty with communication is the assumption that it actually happened. So we can talk for a very long time, but if they're not hearing us, it's an interesting. You mentioned your Jewish friends. You know, one of the central prayers to Judaism, the Shema, it says Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai
Mm-hmm,
Echad.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically it starts with Israel, hear, open your ears, hear, and listen. So it's more than just listening. He wants you to hear what is being said. And so that's, I think, so vital to personal relationships myself.
100%. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you were not present and they were talking to you for 30 minutes and you were not hearing them? You might have been listening to some chatter, but you were not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you care about someone, you have to be present and you have to pay attention to them. It doesn't mean text on your phone, watch TV, read a book, do something, anything other than giving that person the respect and attention they deserve.
Right. Now, I know as a guy that I have a tendency to zone out, especially after a long day at work. And that's a horrible, horrible thing, because what you just said is exactly right. It's a lack of respect. It's a lack of a desire to be in a relationship with that other person at that moment. And so that being said, do women do that too, or is it just guys?
I do that 100%. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I am a morning person. I function at 5:30 in the morning. I get more done by 8 or 9 a.m. than most people get an entire day, because that is my zone time, right?
Okay.
So once 3 p.m. comes around, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to look at anyone. I don't want to have conversations with anyone. And if I come home to someone, I certainly don't want an entire recap of their day until the next day, because I'm probably going to zone out at that point. Having said that, you need to know your audience, right? You need to know who you're communicating with, because sometimes I want to hear all about your day, but maybe I don't want to hear about it right now.
Right.
You know, sometimes you need to set aside time for you every day. And that's not being unpresent with someone. That's just being present with yourself. And if you can't be present with yourself after you've given yourself out to everyone else during your day, then you're doing yourself and your partner a disservice in the long run, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there needs to be a common ground where, if you know you communicate better at a certain time of day, or you have boundaries and say, listen, you know, from when I get home to around 7:30 at night, that's my time. That's my exercise time. That's my meditative time. That's the time when I'm going to zone out and just be with myself. Mm-hmm. After that, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let's regroup. Let's be present with each other. But you can't just come home from a long day and expect to roll into the vomit of what happened on someone's day. It's not fair to that other person to do that to them. Okay. It's just not fair.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So again, that's been a huge focus for us as we're looking at relationships. The next topic I want to kind of touch on a little bit is style. You know, we live in South Florida, a lot of amazing designers and great places to shop down here and things like that. You know, and they, you know, what is the old song about a sharp dressed man or whatever it is? So tell me, like, going into this next season, I saw some different things. The thin tie thing is going good with Prada, and they're putting some things on the runway that's kind of interesting. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there, though. So, like, what are you like when you're kind of going out on a town with the girls and stuff like that, and maybe you spot a guy? What kind of clothing are you guys? What kind of clothing do you feel is attractive?
I think a man looks really good in a hot, sexy pair of jeans, and like well-fit jeans, not like 80s wash jeans, denim. Like, we're talking like a nice pair of denim jeans.
No Jinkos or anything, right?
No Jinkos. We're talking like no Jinkos. I mean, I love Jinkos back in the day, but like not now. Just a good pair of with a nice pair of like nice loafers, whether it's like Gucci loafers or just a nice, you know, nice loafer shoe. And then a blazer, I think, is super hot.
Okay. And so you're gonna shop for your boyfriend, future husband. What store do you go to?
I love There's a few places. First of all, I'm a Macy's gal, 100%.
Okay. All right.
I also love, what is the name of that store? Hold on one second. I'm trying to think of what store it is. It's in the Boca Mall with the cuffs. It changes the cuffs with the shirts and the.
Banana Republic?
No. It's a gentleman's name.
Hmm.
What the hell's his name?
Well, while you're thinking of that, then this month's edition, we have, maybe it'll come to you. We
Robert
basically are looking
Graham.
at
That's his name. Robert
What
Graham.
is it? I've
Robert
never been there
Graham.
before. Is
Oh
that
my
good?
God. Okay. The style is so unique and awesome. It's like rocker chic type thing, but
Nice.
yeah, Robert Graham.
Cool. I'll have to check it out. Very good.
Yes.
Okay. And in this month's edition of the magazine that just came out today, we're looking at kind of beachwear. We're getting it. We're in Florida, so we have a very, very short period of time that's actually wintry. But people are filling up the beaches. We got the vacation thing going on, the spring break thing going on. So when guys are going to shop, I went out and kind of secret shopped a Nomad surf shop. Do you know where that is?
No.
You never been to Nomad surf shop?
Nope.
Now, this place was founded by a guy by the name of Ron Heaviside way back in the day. It is not a chain place by any stretch of the imagination. And he passed away not too long ago. Now it's run by his son. It's over in Gulfstream, just north of Delray Beach on Atlantic. And he custom shaped.
I have been there. I have been there.
So I kind of went in there and snapped some pictures and things like that are in the magazine this month. And when you're going to the beach, I mean, what kind of, we do a lot of water stuff down here in South Florida. So I know there's a lot of the kind of Bahama shorts going on, like the shorty shorts. There's a classic board short. What kind of things do you like to see guys running around in and doing the whole Baywatch thing at the beach with?
I think the classic board shorts kind of sexy. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, like the whole grunge phase. So I think like a good board short, kind of hot. I'm not really into the Speedo thing or the little tight boy. Not into that at all.
Now, a funny story is that when I was in college, I went to university at Northwood University in West Palm, and my college roommate was a Jewish guy. He owns a cheesesteak place up in PA right now called Jay's Joint, and he got a job while we're in college at the Speedo store in the Gardens Mall, which was hilarious. Because he was probably a good solid maybe 250. So he'd have the breakaway pants with the Speedo, and it was just absolutely hilarious. But it was always done as kind of a joke.
I mean, people have been, if you're swimming in a pool and you're swimming laps, I can totally understand the whole Speedo thing. I get it. But and Europeans, I lived in Italy, the Europeans are very much into their physique, and they take great care of themselves, and they can rock a Speedo, I think, pretty well. Mm-hmm. So I think it depends on what continent you're on.
Okay.
What you can get away with. I know that sounds kind of strange, but
all right.
Men in Europe have been wearing high waters for several years prior to that becoming a popular thing in the US.
So you mentioned Italy. What is your nationality? Italian?
I'm Italian and a mutt of everything else on the other side.
Okay. One of the things I found interesting is actually Stella was my grandmother's name on my father's side, and so I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah. And
what Stella means in Italian, right?
What's that?
It means star.
Really? Okay.
Stella means star.
She was definitely a star. Being in Women's Month, officially Women's Month, mm-hmm. She was the hardest working women. I never met her. She passed away before I met her. But she had 3 sons that she raised pretty much on her own. Had a husband, but he didn't work. He pretty much watched hockey all day and didn't do much. And so she kind of worked herself to death. And but my dad said she's one of the hardest working women that he's ever known. And all 3 of the sons, because they saw that going on, always were super, super hardworking men that, always took care of their household. because they saw kind of what their mom went through. And so that was always inspiring to me.
I love that. I think whoever raised you, you have a deep connection with. I was raised mostly by my father because my mother passed away when I was very young. So I think I gravitate naturally to men as far as trust and friendship. Just like a lot of women that were raised, let's say, by a single mom would gravitate and feel more comfortable with older women. So I think it just depends on your environment.
Yeah, I talk to a lot of females, and they really have to be intentional about liking other women, because they always tell me other women are catty. I just get along better with the guys, and da da da. Because guys sometimes, especially if you're romantically interested in someone and you see her hanging out with all guys all the time, it can be kind of like, well, this is kind of strange. Are we something or not? Or and it's kind of getting to know. No, that's just kind of her thing. She just doesn't get along with women very well.
I have a lot of male friends, let's put it that way,
Mm-hmm.
but not that I actually hang out with in person. Why? Because they have wives or girlfriends. So out of respect for them, unless we all go out together,
Mm-hmm.
the friendship is mostly over the phone. That's unintentional, but now that I'm looking at it, it's probably because you don't want to disrespect the other female. I mean, it's one thing if you go out as couples, but I've had a friend for 25 years. We were roommates in college together, but he's married, and we talk a lot on the phone. But it would be very awkward if we wanted to go and hang out for a weekend. It would be kind of inappropriate. So there's a fine line when you have friends from the opposite sex. I
Right.
think.
I mean, for me personally, at least, I'm divorced also. So I was with the same gal for about 19 years, and so we were high school sweethearts and
Oh
everything.
wow.
But for me, like, I was always super intentional about not really being alone with other women, especially once we got married. Just because, not that I thought that I would do anything or they would do anything, but just out, like you said, out of simple respect.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're going out as a group and hanging out with your coworkers. I've always worked with men because I've always been in sales. So it's
Right.
typical that men are in sales and we maybe hit a bar after work, just
That's like normal though. Yeah.
normal stuff. But one on one, inappropriate. I think as a
Yeah.
group, it's more respectful if you're dating someone.
Yeah. All right. So kind of moving on to the next of things, kind of what we look at is the idea of business. So I think you said you studied business, and so maybe give us some insight about what business is. What do you see going on in the American economy? I mean, we had a crazy freaking year where everything got shut down. I'm in a business where I come alongside entrepreneurs and I try and help them build strong, fruitful businesses, from everything from their business planning to their marketing and all that jazz. And so it's kind of tough because people are gun shy right now. But how do you see things kind of playing out? We've got gas prices pretty much more than doubled since the election ended. What do you see in the whole business landscape?
I think it's interesting you should ask me that question because, unlike a lot of people, I started a radio show in January of last year, right before this pandemic hit. So
Right.
I invested a lot of time and money and energy into a business that is not tangible. It's airtime, right? So
Right.
I didn't make a whole lot as far as monetary value went, but what I learned from that year was unbelievable. And so for me, I would define last year as a successful year of learning for me in the business world, especially in an industry that I had never been in prior to that. I had
Right.
always been in sales for the most part. And so for me, this was something totally outside my realm, but something I naturally gravitated to. I think that this is a time where if someone wants to take a risk, it's the time
Mhm.
to do it. It's all or nothing. I think this pandemic has taught us that you can lose everything overnight.
Mhm.
And so at the end of the day, if you can lose loved ones to something so horrific as COVID-19, when you wake up in the morning, are you doing what you actually love? Are you with the people that
Right.
you want to be with? Are you surrounding yourself with the right friends, with the right family, with the right clique of people, your tribe that you want? And I did a lot of navigating through that last year with business.
Hmm.
Who do I want as my
Yeah.
partner? Who do I respect? Who do I want to continue to do business with? And I know at this point, through networking, I'm doing the United We Rock event tomorrow night, and several of the people that are sponsors there I've done business with personally over the last few years that I would continue to do business with because I agree with their ethics and whatnot. But I
Hmm.
think that you need to take a risk. There's no without risk, there's no reward. So if
Right.
the definition of insanity, if you've been doing that for several years and something needs to change, that's something you need to listen to in your gut. If something says do something different, you just got to do it.
Right. I mean, that's when I sit down with somebody, a client, and they're thinking about long business. This is they're started in America or out of business within 5 years.
Hmm.
And Harvard actually did a study that says if you're going to start a business, you are 27% more likely to have a long-termly viable business if you simply take the stuff in your head and write a formal business plan. So they're telling you right up front that if you spend whatever amount of time it takes to write a formal business plan, your probability of actual long-term success increases by almost 30%. So to me, it's kind of like a no-brainer that that's where we need to start, because that's going to, first of all, weed out a lot of business ideas that weren't viable to begin with, right? And then it's also going to lead you into a position where you're wrestling with those things that maybe you would have been blindsided by had you just kind of just ran at it, kind of without actually thinking things through. And
Hmm.
so that's a big part of what we do as far as my, Gentleman's Purpose e-magazine is owned by General Media Consulting, and so that's our main business is the consulting business.
I think
So
that's great advice, Justin, because having a business plan, it's like having a vision board. Something that became really popular with women, and I don't know as much so with men, but with women in the last few years in business, vision boards became extremely popular. Why? Because you sit down with your friends or your coworkers, and you envision and put on paper pictures of your ideal life or goals that you might have. And
mhm.
when you visualize that in your mind is one thing, but when you see it on paper, the likelihood of you achieving that is 50% greater.
Mm. And absolutely. I mean, I'm just now wrapping up a season of doing mentoring for the business students at Florida Atlantic University.
That's
I had
great.
Yeah, I had two students this time. It was my first time ever doing it. One of my students was an accounting student from Nigeria, and then the other student was a finance student from Vietnam. And
Mm,
so had a lot of really good conversations with them. They both were working, so I was actually on a conference call earlier today with the guy at FAU that heads this up, and a group of other mentors, and it was very interesting. How important has mentoring been for you? I mean, do you have someone that you kind of mentors you, like a specific person, and then do you have like specific people that you're helping to mentor, kind of like someone above you that's talking into your life and someone below you that you're talking into their life?
I don't feel like I've been a mentor to anyone. I've been fortunate to have lots of mentors that have
Uh-huh.
helped me along the way.
Okay.
Uh, I say that because I don't have siblings and both my parents are deceased. So for me, I look for very strong leadership because I don't have that's what's lacking in my personal life, the leadership of a father or a mother. So for
Okay.
me, in business and in life, I look for strong leadership in my friends.
Okay.
So I would say the people I look up to the most would be my dearest friends who have taught me an enormous amount of information and wisdom when it comes to business and life in general.
Very cool. So where do you like to eat? You reside in Boca, right?
I'm in Delray Beach.
You're in Delray. Okay. So I mean, where do you like to eat? Where's a good if if I've got family coming into town and money's no object, and we're going to go out and we're going to have a great time, an awesome meal, delicious drinks, where am I taking them to?
Well, I'm biased because I love MIA, Mia, which is
Okay.
right behind my house. I frequent that restaurant several times a week. I know the entire staff, all the bartenders, the chef, everything about it. I absolutely love it. It was voted actually one out of the best 10 restaurants in Del Rey. And it's absolutely, I agree with that statement because it's phenomenal. Different
Okay.
weekly specials. The chef is so interesting. He's got such a wonderful story. His beautiful fiance manages the bar. It's a very non-corporate type of atmosphere. And I think that for me personally, when I dine somewhere, I
Right.
want people to know who I am
Yes.
when I dine there. I don't want to just be another person that's seated by a hostess. And that comes from my European living, to be honest with you. You know, in Europe, when you go into a restaurant, you're not going into a chain restaurant. You're going into a restaurant that was the brick and mortar were built by families and generations
Mm.
that know you when you walk in the front door. So
Yes.
for me, if I'm going to spend money in a place that I dine at, I want to know the staff. I want to know what type of people they are. I want to really understand them. And then I can really enjoy myself because otherwise I might as well just stay home.
Very interesting. Excellent. I mean, I grew up in the restaurant business myself, so I couldn't agree with you more. That's very, very well said. All right. So Mia, so we'll have to give that a try and maybe have a review of them in one of the upcoming editions of Gentleman's Purpose. That'd be great.
They are fabulous. They really
Okay.
are. Chef Jason and his beautiful fiance, Yvonne, they are slammed busy. First of all, I went there on a Wednesday and it's crazy because during the pandemic, everything was shut down,
Yeah.
obviously, but to go on a Tuesday or Wednesday just to get takeout and they're slammed busy. I thought to myself, God bless you, because first of all, you made it through the pandemic, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
made it, number one. But not only that, they told me they were busier than before this time last year during before the pandemic, which I think is an amazing testament to what they've done to this restaurant
Yeah.
after really coming in and kind of taking over. So I recommend them to the fullest extent.
Very
I'm
cool. Okay.
obsessed.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So once we've kind of got a good meal in us and we want to kind of settle in for the evening and read a good book, talk to me about some good books that you've read recently, maybe within the last year, that have been impactful in your life.
Um, Rich Dad Poor Dad's always a great, always a great book. I think that The Kite Runner is probably one of my favorite books of all time. I love The Kite Runner, and
Okay.
the movie wasn't that hot, but the book was definitely a classic. I think a lot of the classic books over the pandemic, I think people are getting back to old literature. For me, anyway, that's something that I tend to gravitate towards. Some of the classics, The Scarlet Letter, things of that nature.
Okay.
Uh, Patterson books are always good, so you can't go wrong there. I also think that audiobooks are becoming more and more popular because people are very transient now. So whether you're driving in a car or you're going from place to place, sometimes it's easier to just have an audiobook on. And I
Yeah.
think that part of our culture has shifted a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look how podcasts have taken off. I mean, millions of podcasts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's completely, I mean, everyone and their sister has a podcast, and it's funny because to do it properly and to be really to have great content, you really have to be passionate about doing it. And your content, you have to live and breathe it and really enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying it, don't do it, right? So it's like that with anything in life, with your 9 to 5 job or with whatever you do, you got to love doing it. So content is key. And I think people more than ever, like you just said, are looking for things that have meaning to them. So whether it's a great podcast or an audiobook or a great feel good snuggle up on the couch book, whatever's going to make you unwind at the end of the day and take you to an alternate reality, And that's what we're looking for. I think I lost you, Justin. No, stop cam. Can you hear me, Justin?
All right, I got you back now. Okay.
I'm here.
All right. That was really weird. Okay. So yeah, we just basically, we got a good meal on us, got some good reading. You mentioned the podcast thing. We've also got, talk to me a little bit about music, like what kind of music you listening to these days. What was the first concert you ever went to? This was a conversation I had with someone recently.
It's so funny, actually. The first concert that I can recall going to was Dolly Parton back in the 80s.
Okay. All right.
But I listen to literally everything. I have a fascination for old school hip hop, like 90s, early 2000s is kind of my jam. But I listen to everything from techno to R&B to meditation
Okay.
to just about anything. I mean, I don't discriminate when it comes to music. Let's put it that way.
Any favorite DJs in the area?
Not really.
Okay. You ever
I'm
heard
so
of?
busy that I don't
Yeah.
really. When I want to relax, I guess, and I want to listen to music and relax, I'll put something on like Sade or Enya and just kind of like zone out a little bit, I guess.
Okay. All right.
But
Very
I love
cool.
reggae. When I'm in the car or when I'm relaxing on vacation, I want to listen to some Bob Marley or some new reggae that's going on. I mean, I that's relaxing to me.
Okay. Very cool. There's a young man that I met at the Rock Irish Pub. It's a new Irish pub that opened up last year, and super good people there. They Brian and Brian Jr., dad and a son, kind of run the place, and they got hit with the pandemic and everything like that. But I met a young man, Nick Holidays, and he's Holidays is the name of the band. Have you heard of them? They play a lot of local spots.
I think so. Do they play at Crazy Uncle Mike's?
I think they do, and very eclectic, very 311-ish, reggae style, and just a great group of guys. They actually came out. One of my clients had them come out and play at their venue, and it was.
Neat.
I thought they did a great job.
There's some killer local bands. Crazy Train's a great local band.
Okay.
Also, Girlfriend Materials, another local band. They play all over. There's a lot of really cool places, but Crazy Uncle Mike's is great because they really showcase and feature a lot of some talent in the area.
Okay. Good. Excellent. Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about in Lake Worth. Actually, right now I'm at Common Ground Community Development in Lake Worth Beach. They basically specialize in community development, and a major part of that is music. As you can see, Kelly Olive, this is kind of her music office here, and she does just a fantastic job working with the community and helping to develop those skills. Because a lot of public schools, they don't have the funding for music like they used to back in the day. And so Kelly does a great job with the students here and everything like that. And I think it definitely makes a positive impact on the local community.
Oh, no doubt. I went to Dreyfus School of the Arts, and the arts community fundamentally changed and developed me as a person to this day. If I didn't have my arts background in from middle school through college, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I
Okay.
agree, 1,000%.
All right. So
And
I'm
I
going
was
to
born
try.
and raised in Lake Worth, so that's my hood. L
All
Dub.
right. Very good. Very good. So when it comes to kind of another thing we as guys kind of do, we like to do stuff in Florida. Fishing is a huge thing for us. What do you like to do that's kind of outgoing, like outside of like cycling or anything that would require a certain kind of gear? And tell us about kind of like your stuff that you use to do what you do.
Let's see. That's a good question. I like to lounge a lot by the pool. So just bathing suit required for that and lots of
Right.
sun. But if I'm going to do an activity, I love bowling. I'm not really much of an outdoorsy type of girl.
Okay.
So, I mean, I love going to the beach. I love outdoor festivals like Garlic Fest or Sun Fest when it finally comes back. Anything outdoor music festival like, I'm
Okay.
kind of into. I think that's fun. You
Okay.
can get a nice vibe for that. The Del Rey Affair, things like that, art festivals. I love doing stuff like that because it's interesting. You can have conversation.
Hmm.
You can get some exercise in by walking. You get some sun. So that to me would be a good time. But as far as kayaking and canoeing and all the stuff that you're supposed to like as a Floridian, I'm not really into.
Okay, no worries. And then kind of last thing I want to, and I think this will probably be an area that you definitely shine. Um, Talk to us a little bit about travel, international travel, domestic travel. What does that look like? How important is that to you? And do you make that a priority in your life to see new things and visit new places?
Yeah, that's a good question. I got the travel bug back in 2000 and let's see, two, actually right after 9/11 is when I moved abroad, which everyone said I was crazy for moving to Europe after 9/11. And it was a very interesting time to live overseas during that time. But I did it anyway because I had the trip booked. I was going to FSU at the time. I wanted to study abroad. I wanted to understand more about my Italian roots and my culture.
Hmm.
So I took a leap of faith. And there was some really interesting things that happened that I probably shouldn't have seen studying abroad as an American
Mm.
post 9/11. There was some protesting, there was some death threats, some bomb threats, some things like that internationally that was going on that was kind of under wraps for
Hmm.
international students. But I think traveling and just kind of going for it. I was 19 years old when I first went to Europe, and my dear friend RJ, him and I were buddies, and we were college roommates, and we're still friends to this day. But we traveled all over Europe. We backpacked. We roughed it. I mean, we stayed in
Nice.
hostels and pensions and didn't stay in 4 or 5 star hotels because as college students, you kind of did what you could, right?
Right.
So backpacking is for real. We literally backpacked through Spain for a week and just what we could carry on our back. That's what we did. Took a lot of trains, did a lot of negotiating or trying to figure things out with the transit system and
Hmm.
subways and all that stuff in other countries. But I think that travel has made me extremely worldly, and I definitely probably would not have dated or have had the diversity in my friend group that I have to this day if I had not traveled elsewhere. Because I think that to really understand who you are as a culture, you need to step outside of that culture and immerse yourself in other cultures. So
Okay.
you can really understand who you are to understand somebody else. You're not in your bubble. You got to get outside the bubble.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So going forward, top three next destinations that you'd like to spend some time.
Well, right now I've got to renew my passport. So that literally, I was literally doing that yesterday. on the computer, printing out the stuff, and got to do that. But, you know, I'm kind of all over the place. I think staying within the US is something that because I've done so much international travel, and especially because of the pandemic, I think right now I really would like to see America. I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but taking an RV and going to just different campsites and seeing the US, I think is something that interests me because we're home and international travel might be difficult right now with everything going on. I think you should see the homeland.
Oh, I think that's definitely a good thing. I mean, I recently looked online. It was like $50 for a round trip ticket to New York or something. I've never even been
Exactly.
and so you can do those things very quick, long weekend or something like that, and see some new places.
Yeah, like last year I went to Vegas for the first time in my life. I mean, I'm 38 years old, but I would love to go back to Las Vegas. I would love to go to Texas. Arizona. There's a lot of places in the U.S. that I've actually never been to before that I think would be intriguing. New Orleans. I've never been to New Orleans. Go figure.
Okay.
I've been to more countries than states, so that's a problem. I think. I think for now, I would rather just kind of hang out and see the U.S.
I think you'd probably enjoy a city like maybe Savannah, Georgia is not too far, and I think
I've heard it's beautiful. I've driven through Savannah, but I've never actually stayed in Savannah. It's the most haunted city in the country. And my best friend goes there every year, and she actually had a very paranormal experience in one of the most haunted hotels in Savannah, which is very interesting. So ghost hunters love Savannah, Georgia.
Well, I grew up in Cassadaga, Florida. We had 3.5 acres on the outskirts of Cassadaga, Florida, where all the witches and all that stuff kind of gather, like the spiritist center of the whole planet. And so it was definitely interesting growing up in that town.
I could only imagine. I've heard some very interesting stories. It's fascinating. I was named after a psychic, so I'm very intrigued in all of that type of talk, and I'm a believer.
All right. I would definitely want to hear maybe a little bit more about your kind of time in Italy, but we're just about to hit an hour. So I'm as much as I would love to sit and talk with you some more, I think we should probably wrap it up. And any kind of closing encouragement to the listeners and the readers of Gentleman's Purpose going forward, just to be well-balanced men who are considered maybe by ladies such as yourself as to be gentlemen?
I think it's important to be authentic and be yourself. Every time you try to be something or someone that you're not, it always backfires. So whether it's a first date, if it's a first encounter, if it's a business meeting, always try to put your best foot forward and be your authentic self, because the last thing you want to do is end up in a situation where you're uncomfortable because you weren't authentic. Justin, can you hear me?
Okay, let's try that one more time.
Let's try that one more time.
All right, so being authentic is where we left off there.
Yeah, I think it's important to be authentic. I think a lot of people spend way too much time and energy trying to be something or someone that they're not. And I think that comes with age too. I think the fact that I'm 38 years old, I think once you're approaching 40, in my opinion, especially as a female, you start to understand that you really enjoy your own company. And I think you have to really enjoy who you are as a person in order to enjoy someone else's company. And so part of that is being yourself, because if you're trying to be someone you're not and you're hanging out with someone that you really don't like, then what's the point?
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. All right. Well, very cool. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Anytime we'll do like a part 2 or a part 3.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just for the viewers, just a reminder, go ahead and pick up the April edition of Gentleman's Purpose. It's free. There's some hyperlinks in there on the advertisers. So if you see something you like amongst our advertisers, just click the link. It'll take you right to their website, and you can check them out and order some stuff and do that sort of thing. Other than that, if you have any comments or questions, I'm always available. Both for the magazine as well as General Media Consulting if you're a business owner, and I can be reached at 1-800-484-9825. All right, Janine, thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thanks for having me.